it?
Began writing Believe It or Not back in 1918. He stored all his material in a bunch of old dusty trunks. Today, of course, there's an entire organization behind that syndicated column. It's a Canadian operation, and it relies on computers to keep track of everything from bizarre legacies to absolute miracles. Many of those little outrageous tidbits of trivia have been compiled into a hardcover book called The Book of Chance. Its author, David Miller, is with us this morning. Good morning, David.
Morning, Pam.
Do you really expect me to believe that you have brought with you a real live shrunken head?
I hope it's not alive, but...
Well, okay, a real live dead. Here, why don't you hold it, David?
Well, I've been traveling with her for a couple of weeks, so I guess we're close friends. Yeah, that is the head of a 13-year-old Javero Indian girl that Robert Ripley obtained in 1937 when he went to the upper reaches of the Amazon. He got 12 from the Javeros, and there were only 12 in North America. And the heads were used as battle trophies by the Javero Indians. And it's quite a process. That is her real hair, and it's shrunken down to about a third of her size.
And these have been verified by those who know.
Oh, yes, indeed.
You believe it?
I believe it. I've got to believe it. We're more than good friends.
Now, what about some of the other little things that you've brought with you here? Tell the story of this tiny little shoe.
That is a Chinese binding slipper. You see my hand inside it? That's about 3 inches long, and that was worn by a 20-year-old girl in 13th century China. And small feet, of course, were a sign of great beauty in China. And they started binding the feet at birth. Now, the girl who wore this couldn't walk. She could only barely hobble, and she was carried about on a litter. And the process ended about 20 years ago, but they were doing it right up to the 1950s, binding feet.
Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
What's this now?
That, again, that's another Chinese artifact. That's the Chinese money sword, just the thing for going to your corner milk store. And because of the bandit hordes in China, 12th, 13th, 14th century, most of the coins were made into weapons. Shields, spears, large swords. This is a club-type sword, and you can see the size of it. A little small handle on it. And this was legal currency in China. You could take this to the milk store and bingo, get 2 quarts homogenized.
Well, I doubt that. How did Ripley and the organization come up with all these things? Did they have an awful lot of money to go out and buy them?
Robert Ripley himself obtained most of these artifacts. He traveled the world as part of his Believe It or Not column. He made many trips to China, many trips to the Orient, and literally went everywhere. And every time he went somewhere, he'd buy things. And now Ripley's has 10 museums across Canada and the United States and in Europe, which we call auditoriums, O-D-D-I-T-O-E. And these are artifacts from those museums.
Now, the book that you've just authored is called The Ripley's Book of Chance.
That's right.
The chance of things happening.
The chance of you getting a heart attack yesterday are much higher than tomorrow.
Why is that?
Because Monday is a stress day. And the rest of the week, it's downhill. Friday, you won't have a heart attack.
That's a good day. What about Ronald Reagan and the number 7?
Yeah, interesting story. When Ronald Reagan was 17, he rescued 77 people from drowning. He made his first movie in 1937. He was elected president of the Screen Actors Guild in 1947. He was elected governor of California in 1967. He was re-elected in 1970. He made his acceptance speech for the Republican nomination on the 17th day of the 7th month, 1980. He was shot in his 70th day in office, and believe it or not, the bullet ricocheted off his 7th rib. And if he finishes his term, he'll be 77. Believe it or not.
It is amazing. Now, the story that really fascinated me was about Jimmy Dean, the rebel without a cause.
Yes.
Tell me about that one.
This is verified. The story of the James Dean death car. It was a black racing car, and Dean took it out on a perfect afternoon, and for no apparent reason, lost control of the car, and the car flipped over and killed him. But it didn't explode. Within 2 hours, the curious came to pick over the wreckage. The first person who touched the car, boom, the car suddenly exploded, and many people were badly burned. The car was then towed off to a garage to check to see if mechanically it was all right. The garage mechanic put it on the hoist, got underneath it, the hoist collapsed, and the car crushed him. Then 2 doctors in 2 different parts of the states bought the 4 wheels off the car. Within a week and exactly the same day, 1 doctor was killed in a car accident with the wheels in the car. The other doctor flipped his car and lost an arm. Then the car was put back together, and it was exhibited at an auto show in Los Angeles. The night before the show opened, for some reason, fire swept the building. Every car was damaged by smoke and fire except for the James Dean car. It was then taken to San Francisco. En route, a trailer truck, the cab of the truck flipped over, the driver was killed, the trailer rolled to the side of the road, the back doors opened, and the James Dean car rolled off and was found right behind the trailer in perfect condition. And finally, believe it or not, the car was shipped to Miami for another auto show, and it was put into 3 boxes, sealed in a freight car and a train, with a manifest on the door. The train arrived in Miami, they opened the freight car, nothing, and no one has seen the car since.
Do you believe that?
Yes, I do.
Are there witnesses?
There are witnesses, there are affidavits, everything is verified and checked that's in this book.
Okay, one final story. Jane Mansfield and her pink mansion.
Ah, yes. Jane was, at the end of her career in the late 60s, turned to devil worship, and she was a member of Anton Meyer's devil sect in Hollywood. She left it, but not before a curse was placed on her, her possessions, and her manager. Within a week, she was killed, decapitated in a road accident. Her manager was driving a pink Cadillac, her car, and he was killed also. Her house went up for sale. It was a pink mansion in Bel Air with a heart-shaped bed, pink furniture, pink rugs, you name it. And what happened, the first person who bought it was a doctor. The day he took possession, he drove through the gate, lost control of the car crashed into the fountain, he was killed. A house was then sold to Mama Cass Elliott. She wanted to renovate it. The day the renovators moved in, she was in England, in London. That night, she died under quite mysterious circumstances, and then went to a 68-year-old real estate agent. And within a week, she started to dress in Jane Mansfield's old clothes. She dyed her hair and ended up insane. Then it went to Ringo Starr of the Beatles. He owned the house for a year and a half, had it painted 7 times, and each time the pink color came back. And finally, it was owned by Engelbert Humperdinck, who hired a Roman Catholic priest to perform an exorcism before he moved in. And no trouble except for an earthquake, which opened a heart-shaped crater in the front lawn.
Believe that or not. David Miller, author of Ripley, Believe It or Not, Book of Chance. We'll be right back, maybe.